right, we're live. Welcome to this week's episode of Future Fridays, where we chat about future tech headlines from the week. I'm your host, Wiz, and you can find me on Twitter at WhimsicalWiz. Today we have three lovely guests, and I'm going to have each of them go around and give their short 280-character bio. And we also have Yael, who is a cartoonist and will be live doodling with us for fun. You can find all of her really funny cartoons on Instagram at Yael Cecilia. The link is down there on the slide. Great. So Jenny, we'll start with you. Do you want to just give a short introduction?
I just want to know, am I getting a cartoon of me in my sweatpants at home? That's so exciting.
Might be able to make that happen.
Jenny Fielding. I'm the managing director at Techstars New York, and I run the fund, a first check fund investing in pre-seed companies in New York.
Awesome. Zohaib?
Yeah, hey, I'm Zohaib. I'm the founder of Resemble. We're a generative speech company, so we clone voices and we help you scale beyond what the traditional methods allow.
Cool. And Todd?
I'm Todd Roback, CEO at Fahrenheit 212. We are a product development and innovation company. We create new products, services, new business models out of emerging technologies and whatever we can find. We do that for Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies.
Awesome. So we're going to kick things off with a game. Before we jump to the game, all of the headlines that we're going over this week all come from a newsletter that I work on called This Week in Creative Tech. It's a weekly newsletter with about 30 different featured headlines from the week. All the ones today came from that. So we'll kick off with a game. So this is round one. There's going to be a prize for the winner. The prize is super fun as well. This first round is going to be worth 5 points. So I'm going to be keeping track of points as we go. So we've got 3 headlines in front of us. 2 of them are real and 1 of them is fake. Hold your answers. I'm going to read all 3 of them out, and then we're going to do a rock, paper, scissors, shoot, and you'll just each shoot 1 to 3, whatever you think the fake headline is. So first one is, scientists have created a new type of robot that is literally alive. The second one is, Japanese university used remote control robots to hold a virtual graduation. And the third one is, MIT researchers are powering ocean liners with ocean trash. So hands up, and we'll do rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Ready? Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Okay, you guys all got 3. I realized that I sent the slides beforehand without the games, but you know that the next coming headline is the first one, so that makes the game not as good.
So much for games.
Okay, 5 points for everyone. Let me record that. Great, so we'll move on to the first headline for discussion, which is, scientists have created a new type of robot that is literally alive. So the summary here is that researchers at Tufts University have come up with a new type of life form that is half living cells and half robot, and they're calling them xenobots. So xenobots are living organisms that are fully programmable.
Good afternoon. Let's have some fun.
So living organisms that are fully programmable and can change form and function on command. They can be designed to have legs and allow them to navigate and move through challenging terrain. They can also swim or link up to each other and use appendages. Super crazy. The bots can also heal themselves, recovering from damage, including being almost torn in half. Researchers have no real use cases yet for how they may use these, but the bots can do things like move together towards a target. They can pick up like very tiny payloads. They're only a millimeter in size and deliver them to specific places inside of the body. But that's the headline. So over to you guys. First thoughts?
Wow. Are you sure this wasn't fake?
My first thought is that they only live for a week, and that's like really sad.
Yes, very sad.
I was thinking, thank God they only live for a week. That's like the redeeming thing about all of this. I've seen enough movies to know how this all ends when they start to like combine and recombine. I think there's a Spider-Man villain that does just that. So I don't. No, thank God. Thank God they only live for a week. I think that's like the core feature.
I guess one of the questions here is, will we continue to see the lines between man and machine continuing to blur? I mean, we're talking about future tech headlines. What does this look like 20 years out? Like, are we going to end up in a potentially dystopian future where it's man and machine Terminator are one?
I mean, I like to take the opposite, which is if we were doing, more experimentation, we'd probably have more cures for things like COVID and others. So I think this is really exciting. Feel a little bad they only last for a week or live for a week, but I think it's pretty cool, right? And like good use of those frog embryos. So I'm all for it.
What about ethical implications here? I mean, does this start to cross lines, and sort of where does it go from here?
I think we're pretty far away from it being ethically challenging. A lot of the article probably is a little skeptical on how it works, especially when they say they have no use cases, because everyone here can think of use cases, like medically, like good use cases, not bad use cases, but you can run simulations, all that kind of stuff. So I'd like to see how feasible it is. But it's actually really cool because like we a lot of this can actually help us understand more about ourselves and what Jenny said earlier. If we can try to mimic what we think how the brain operates, then we create simulations and actually run experiments on robots that us.
It's maybe one of those things where the use case is just going to be very far from where we would imagine, because we'll always go straight to medicine. I mean, maybe we're building in strange environments, right? Or a little bit of, maybe it's something that's we're a few generations away and we need to be actually on the moon for this thing to be useful. This feels like one of those things where it's like, all right, we'll revisit this in a couple of decades, but maybe not right now. I too am always concerned when someone introduces their new technology with "there are no use cases," because usually that's like the first thing you talk about, and you give it a why before you give it a what. But interesting nonetheless.
That's why they call it the mad scientist, right?
Yeah, Jenny, probably not a great investor pitch to say that there's no good use cases yet, right?
You're going to love this. It has absolutely no commercial application.
But that's why they come to me. I help them tell the story. I'm all about the narrative, right? So we're solving COVID with frog embryos. We're on a good path.
Nice. Speaking of narrative, let's switch over to our cartoonist and see what we've got for a funny cartoon related to this headline. Oh, you're muted still.
We got her.
It's like most startups.
To a really dark place right away. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice. All right. Cool. We'll move on and we'll switch over to the next headline. So, next headline here is Apple's the likely buyer of NextVR, which is a live event streaming AR/VR company that's being sold for an estimated $100 million. The summary here is that Apple's been quietly building towards a future where AR and VR are more ubiquitous. We've seen this with things like the introduction of ARKit on all of our phones. Plus, a lot of people are saying that things like Apple Watches and AirPods are the start of a hardware system that will enable us to culminate in a VR, AR environment with a headset, most likely. This headline is about Apple being in the process of acquiring... Oh, where's my timer? This headline is about Apple being in the process of acquiring NextVR, which is a VR company that allows streaming of live music and sporting events. So turning it over to you guys, when will we see Apple get into AR and VR in more of a meaningful way? Everyone's saying they were building towards it, but we haven't seen any big splashes. What is that going to look like?
I mean, there is no better time than right now. Everyone is, stuck at home wishing that they were in all these cool exotic places. So if they're going to do it, they should do it now. But yeah, I'm seeing lots more people kind of turn to technology while they're home, and some really interesting use cases around therapies and other things, which I think are just really enhanced during this strange time that we're in. So I think it's coming.
I don't know. So two things. One is, when is Apple going to do it? Is always like a question that's always kind of goes sideways for me, because it took them a really long time. They couldn't really make a TV when they wanted to, so it takes them a really long time to commit to something. And I see this as more acquiring a bunch of engineers in the space as much as having an idea for that technology. The other weird thing about it is like, this is still like a non-problem. So I totally agree with Jenny in that, like, where we are right now, it would be nice to be where we're not. And so maybe it accelerates. But like, I just don't believe there's somebody sitting watching a game being like, what if I had a different angle on this game? I think there's a very small amount of people that think it's cool, and maybe I'm just grumpy about it. But I would love, like, aside from like the really narrow use cases of like testing and learning, like teaching airplane mechanics, like on things where it's really hard to learn how to learn how to do, which are really like specific. For the big broad, like wouldn't it be great if you were at the game in a different way? I don't know. I think those use cases are coming. I just don't think they're like the ones that we all think. So I don't know. I don't think anyone's saying like, wow, like, please put me in give me a different angle on the Lakers. What we have is super fun. This is like a fake problem. It's like a fake problem for me, and there's so much of that, which is a little bit of why, like, you see the AR VR stuff, like, always been talked about in terms of its potential, but hasn't really blown the doors out yet. And either way, even if you showed me a good angle to put this thing on my face, I'd rather be with a friend and have like a beer and something that I don't have to like be in that position. It's going to take a big value prop to get this thing onto my face.
Should we go back to black and white television then? No innovation. It's all good.
No, I'm a professional innovation man, I think. I like it. I like it so much. It's a very and you know, maybe to your point, like, there was a problem of like, hey, things can get better, and they did. So I'm not against good things getting better. I think the definition of, like, just because you can doesn't mean that I think that's like the best use case for this thing. I like where you were going before, of like, maybe it's places you can't go, and if you could, like, but if it's things that you're just going to get from a different angle, I don't love it. And so I'm still looking for that
concert. Like, you can watch a concert on television, it's pretty flat, right? But if you can get that like 4D experience where it's like you feel the lights and you can see from all the angles, like, I don't know, that would make me tune in a little bit. I'm not saying that, every morning I wake up and I'm like, damn, I can't experience a concert that way. But I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I get it. I think it could be. I think the concert thing could be cool. I think it could. I just don't know.
Do you guys have AR or VR devices?
What's that?
Do you guys have AR or VR devices at home?
Not at home.
Yeah.
I do. I've got the Quest. I brought it with me to Florida.
Yeah. What about you, Jenny? Do you have an AR or VR device?
Jenny, I think the question's to you.
I don't have one in my home, but I've used many of them. So I'm a big fan. More AR stuff, which I do use on my phone, but don't use a VR headset at home.
I think what Apple's really good at is providing content. So if you look at like transition from the iPhone to the iPad, they did a really good job of already having an ecosystem in place where they made it really easy for developers to transition from one to the other. And that transition didn't happen in like a year. It took multiple years for them to come out with the iPad. But what they made sure is when they actually had the iPad out there, what companies like, HoloLens or Magic Leap or Facebook even are struggling with is actual content on these devices. So if you have a VR device, most of the time, most of my friends are playing Beat Saber. Fantastic.
Like, fun.
What's beyond that? And I think most of the time right now, it's really hard to develop, and building that ecosystem is taking a long time. And I think Apple's taken their approach of, well, let's put out the SDKs and the APIs out there so that people are building some use cases with or some applications on their phone for VR, AR. And then they'll figure out what the most Apple way of doing things, probably the most boring way of doing things, which is they'll figure out what the minimum requirements are, what do people really care about, and how do you like when we imagine Apple making a play here, I doubt the play is going to be like, oh, I don't know, but I doubt the play is going to be like, here's an AR device with like some haptic suit that you got to wear and glasses, and it tracks your fingers and hands, and it's like all these bells and whistles. It'll most probably be like, here's some glasses. They look good, so you'll wear them. That's good. And then maybe there'll be notifications. Maybe there's going to be some applications, and we'll start from there. So it's like when the iPhone first came out, all the ads were all like, here's like this ball, and look, the gyroscope works, fantastic. And that was the ad for like the first year. And after that, it's like then the applications started coming in, and they started looking different from each other. So I think it's like here with Next VR, it's interesting because they're very much in like the licensing space. So they have a lot of deals that are already in place with like the NBA and etc. So it could be interesting where Apple previously have indicated about like making things a little bit more social, where they took like their Apple TV and tried making it more social. So I think it's like it's a good purchase for them. It's something
good futures. I like that. It's a good painting. We're gonna move on to the next game. So this one is for 5 points as well, and this is a multiple choice. So we've got a headline, and then there's a blank, and the true answer to the blank is one of those 3 options below. So I'll read the headline out, and then whenever you guys are ready, just write them down on your piece of paper, the answer, and then I'll signal you guys off to show them to the camera. So a group at MIT figure out how to make an emergency ventilator for X amount of dollars using a common hospital item instead of the usual $30,000 that they cost to produce. So is it A, $100, B, $1,000, or C, $10,000? So whenever you guys are ready, just give me a thumbs up, and then you can flash them to the screen. Go ahead. Nice, you guys got them all right again. Last time was a lot more discrepancy in who got what. You guys are killing it. 10 points each. Nice. We'll have to have a second place and a third place prize too. So they were able to create an emergency ventilator. It's not meant for regular use. It's like if we run into a horrible situation, here's a ventilator that we can build with materials worth $100. Hopefully we don't end up in that place, but it's an interesting possibility. So we'll move on to
with like a plastic bag. Like they were saying that, you could get something going with a bag, which is pretty incredible.
So the item that they're using, which is the main item that's part of the $100 cost, is one of those, I don't know what the medical term is, but it is like a plastic bag-like that they used for some sort of breathing thing. So they're repurposing that. So like a medical plastic bag, which is pretty interesting.
Awesome. Let's bring plastics back.
All right, guys, next headline here. So SpaceX's Starship user guide details how it could offer luxury passenger flights. So the summary here is that SpaceX writes a lot of really interesting user guides for all their ships, and they're often interesting insight into how they're actually thinking about the ships and what they can be used for. So this one is for SpaceX's next generation of launch vehicle, which is called Starship. And in the user guide, one of the potential configurations that they talk about is for luxury passenger flight. So they say that it could carry as many as 100 people and could include things like private cabins, large common areas, and even a viewing gallery. So I'll pass it over to you all. Is space travel going to be replacing trips to Tulum sometime soon?
Can you shower in space? I want to know if there's a shower in there.
Good question.
I have no idea.
All I can say is finally, because I was ready for space, but it wasn't luxury enough for me.
Well, that's why I asked about the shower.
Yeah, I was like, okay, space, I'm in. Who wouldn't be? But that's the problem, right? I don't want to hang out with other people during my space flight. That's me time, right? That's when I'm going to pay a lot. I want to get up there. So I feel like a private cabin. Yes, you have me right there. And I'm going to spend. I don't know the exact price point, but if we're going to be somewhere in the, let's say, 5 million range, right? Like, I'll spend the extra couple $100,000, right, to get myself like a little bit of private cabin, extra snacks. Also, I have the question of where we're going. Like, is it a flight or is it a trip?
It's a tour. It's a tour.
It's a tour.
Yeah, like a 3-hour tour.
Okay. Yeah. Are we doing a lap? Are we going up and down? Like, these are questions. Is that answered in the article anywhere?
Yeah, so interestingly, there's two use cases. One is just like an orbit of space. I don't know how many orbits, but it's basically going up. Let's look at the world from the top, spend some amount of time up there, probably nights if you've got a private cabin, right? And then land back. The other use case is actually for point-to-point travel. So something that's interesting is we haven't made a lot of big progress on travel time for international flights. Like the amount of time that it takes to go from New York to London, as an example, hasn't really changed in the last 10 years since like the Concorde peaked. One thing that SpaceX and also Virgin Galactic are looking at is it way faster if we can instead shoot up to orbit, circle around to the globe, and then drop back down into London? So there's sort of two potential use cases. I mean, I don't know how they're going to make that economic. You know, maybe, Todd, you'd pay $5 million plus $100,000 for a private cabin to go up to space on like a vacation, but are you going to pay like a ton of money just for a shorter flight to London? Like, probably not.
I mean, like, I'm sure everybody like get to London now and then. It better be a super important meeting if I have to go to space. Like, that meeting better be. I think we've all learned in the past couple of weeks that you can do a lot on a Zoom call. If I have to go to space, and really like environmentally burn that kind of energy to get and resources to get to London, like whatever happens in London better be freaking amazing. That technology you're talking about, by the way, of like go up because it's faster, is how missiles work too, right? It's how certain kind of
Exactly.
That's basically like how they figured out how to blow up the world. We're like, actually, it's much faster if we just go to space and then go down. So I'm glad they're now applying that to like bullshit conferences in London, but maybe not. Maybe again, not to be grumpy about it all, but I'm intrigued. Maybe not the use case.
So, hey, Todd needs a private cabin and Jenny needs a shower. What's going to take you up to space?
Honestly, seems like if it's luxury, then it's probably some sort of like a tour, right? I'm probably not traveling if I want to fly to space and come back. It seems very, I mean, it seems kind of absurd.
Window seat. So just, make sure you put that down in his profile.
Yeah, I mean, but it could be like, I can imagine like you going up to space just to have that experience, really, right? I think that's making that experience better and I'm not sure what's in that user guide, but is it like, do you get proper meals, or like are they like themed luxury flights or space flights? But yeah, that could be fun. See the entire
Jokes aside, I mean, we got two serious companies now working on space travel for high net worth individuals. When will we see people start to actually go to space for tourism?
I have no idea. This is not something I can opine on, but I can say that use case of going up to space to go to London really just doesn't sit well with the environmentalist in me. So, I might stick to how I usually go on boat.
Got it. All right, guys, we'll move on to the cartoon for this cartoon. So the cartoon for this slide. Cartoonist, what do you got for us? Yep.
Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, mic wasn't working before. All right. Let's share. All right, we got one. A little abstract about the overview effect.
I like it.
Thanks. Got a caption too.
Excellent.
Continues. And then I was trying to draw your shower situation real quick.
Nice. I think you've captured my hair well.
Not specifically you. I did the situation. I thought it was like that Homer Simpson scene where he's flying around with a bunch of chips, except it'd be water and shampoo.
I love it.
It'd be beautiful. Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you.
That's all I got.
If you get kind of the same experience with the VR thing that we talked about earlier.
Space shower in VR.
To bring that feel.
All right, move on to the last headline for today. So this one is YouTube is reportedly working on its TikTok competitor called Shorts. So the summary here is that obviously TikTok has seen an insane amount of popularity. Excuse me. And YouTube is now looking to compete in the short form user-generated content space by launching its own app called Shorts. So TikTok has reported 847 million downloads over the last 12 months, which is nuts. And YouTube has about 2 billion monthly active users. So question to you all. We just saw Quibi launch a few days ago. Is short form video consumed on small screens the next frontier for video?
I mean, I would just like to say that I thought YouTube was short form, and the fact that like our attention span as humans has now gone down to 3 to 10 seconds is somewhat concerning. So yes, I do think it is the future, and I think it's a sad future.
It's going to be interesting how creative people get with this, right? So far with TikTok, you've seen like an explosion of creativity. People have to get the message across in a very short period of time, or whatever they're trying to do. Same thing with Quibi. You're trying to like, something that takes you a 2-hour experience in a movie, trying to compress it down into a few minutes. It's interesting that YouTube is moving into this space because they kind of have that kind of creative individual crowd that's it's like a blank slate for them, which kind of might work really well.
Yeah, I would agree. I also admit to loving TikTok, so I'm super biased. TikTok is like, if you want to be at the JFK airport and get home, which is usually like 45 minutes, you can just open TikTok and you're there. It's faster than going to space. It's amazing. It's just like it makes time disappear. That's the killer feature is it just makes waiting disappear. And so, nothing wrong with YouTube doing the same thing, the same way Instagram picking up stories everyone complained about until like Snapchat feature. Nothing wrong with people experimenting with form, given how static it was for so long. And I do think it is, to answer the actual question, I do think I don't know if I think the app is whatever it is, right? But the short form for me is going to really be interesting when it starts to match exactly with mass market time periods. Like, so for example, if we were a little bit in the future and automated vehicles were actually happening, well, now I do have an extra 15 minutes on the way to work, and now I do have these like understandable periods of time that you can create large content platforms around. And so just kind of winging it with Quibi, like it works here. It's awesome or it isn't. TikTok being a little more like totally like what Vine was doing a while ago. So I can't tell you how long is going to be the magic length, but I do believe different forms of having really good content. You have to be really creative to do something in a small amount of time. So to let people start to innovate and create for those different things, I think it'll really blow up when it finds its big mass use case, which might be a theme of all this.
The car idea is really interesting. I was listening to a podcast with Daniel X, who's the CEO at Spotify recently. He says the big untapped frontier for them is going to be cars. People listening to podcasts, more audio content, short form audio content, way more in cars. Jenny and Todd and Zohaib, are you all starting to see more people chatting about short form content in general, short form video? Jenny, are you seeing more pitches? Todd, are you hearing more clients talking about this? Zohaib, have you guys started to think about how your voice technology and audio technology can play in that world as well? I'd be curious to hear that.
Well, I would say that this trend, I mean, if you look at how well used the kind of, GIFs are and kind of some of that short form stuff that people have been excited about for a long time. So this just feels to me like an extension of it. Yeah, we're definitely seeing more, applications at Techstars around these as well. But it doesn't, to me, the format doesn't seem super unique. It's kind of an extension of some of the formats that are out there.
On the client side, yeah, particularly people around mobility. And we do have some large kind of network owners. Some of the media conglomerates have been trying to crack this a long time. They're strangely nowhere on it, which is weird because you'd think they'd be all over it, but it's very hard for them to get to shift into this mode. We are seeing the question over and over again, but I don't think we've seen the killer app yet.
We see a lot of content that's produced with synthetic voices being really short. So people who are, it's really interesting what people come up with. But anything from like, you have personalized adventures. So for example, if you are making like voice applications, which are fairly short-lived, the more personalized you can make those, the better you're going to get. With like VR applications, a lot of times when you have like VR movies, you're actually in the movie yourself. When the character looks at you and is talking to you, right now it's like it's not going to call you by name, but it'd be really cool if the character turns around and actually says, "Hey Jenny, what do you think about this rock?" Or, "Hey Todd, what do you think about this rock?" So it's actually talking to you personally, which like I think VR is really meant for, right? Because you're so isolated. So yeah, we see a lot of very interesting use cases with very short form content. A lot of editing is also in play for us. So when people are producing a podcast like we're doing right now or something like that, and you made that mistake very early on, and if you wanted to hide that mistake and still keep it fluent, you could whip up Resemble, use your own voice, get the right word in there, and it'll make it really smooth. So
Nice.
like taking really short chunks and being able to edit them proactively or in the future, it's very common.
Cool. All right, everyone. We'll move on to the last game. Since you are all tied, we're going to make this one worth 20 points. So this is a fill in the blank. This is a real headline. So Google's image classification algorithms are blank. So if you can get the right answer and write it down on the paper, I'll give you 20 points. If you come up with something outrageously funny that isn't correct, I'll give you 10 points. So I'll give you guys 10 seconds or so to either figure out what the right answer is or come up with something outrageously funny. No pressure. And then just all give me a thumbs up when you're ready, and we'll do a show to the screen.
I don't really understand the question. What do you want me to fill in exactly?
So this is a headline from this week, and it's about Google's image classification algorithms. And the person was making a joke in the headline because they were very surprised to see how the image classification algorithms responded.
So we're taking our best guess. The closest one wins, or?
So if you get in the neighborhood of it, you get 20 points, or if you have something funny, you get 10 points. The headline was a joke because a developer fed the API two images that had a small similarity, and Google returned labels for the images over the API, and the labels that it returned showed I'm going to say funny bias, although it's not funny. It showed a bias, and that's what this headline was about. The blank is the bias. What's the bias that Google's image classification algorithms have? What are they?
Oh, now I'm just writing down. Okay, great. Let's just write down some bias. Okay. All right. It's got to be one of these, right? Okay.
What's the third one there, Todd?
That's sexist.
Sexist. Nice. Go ahead. You got anything?
Bad.
Nice.
Pizza.
What do you got?
Pizza.
Let's do it. Pizza.
Pizza.
The correct answer was, in fact, racist. Google's image classification algorithms are racist. And sorry, maybe this was a bad fill in the blank, but the story here was that Google does have an API which you can send images to it, and it'll return what it thinks are the appropriate labels. What happened here is a developer sent it 2 pictures of someone holding a thermometer gun, one of those like laser thermometer guns you can use in the kitchen. Exact same image, except one was a white man's hand and the other was a black man's hand. And the labels that Google returned for the white man's hand was tool, and the label returned for the black man's hand was gun. So this person tweeted this out, and the headline was Google's image classification algorithms are racist? ? There's a lot of commentary about it. The message here is that algorithms are only as good as the biases that you train them with, and this was an example of those biases coming through.
A quick editing ask. Zohaib, is it possible to not to edit out the part where I hold up by my face a piece of paper that says the word racist on it? I feel like out of context that feels like a loss for me. So can we not do that? Can your algorithm just sort of make that into something less terrible?
Yeah, I'll put that to the show editors after the fact.
That feels good. I won, but I lost, didn't I? Okay.
You did win now. All right, guys. So one last time for anyone who's watching and will be watching this later, here's where you can find our guests on Twitter today. Thank you so much. And one final note, again, all the headlines this week came from This Week in Creative Technology, which is a weekly newsletter where we share about 30 of the top future tech headlines from the week. And you can sign up at bit.ly/joinfuturefridays. Thanks again, everyone. This is super fun. Todd, I'll email you about the awesome prize that you're going to get. And thanks everyone else for playing. It was super fun.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Guys, take care. Bye.